Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our new figure showcase series, where I take a quick look at a new figure I'm adding into the collection and do a review and posing session with it. So for today's installment, we're sticking to the MCU, but jumping back to the Earth-based stories as we look at the 6-scale version of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man from Hot Toys. Now, this is the Tobe Maguire, which actually marks the last figure that I'm going to be getting from the Spider-Man No Way Home line. So it finally brings that line to an end, and it's a pretty impressive way to end it, to be honest. Now, this is the deluxe version, which includes the massive diorama base, and I could tell off the bat that this was going to be something crazy. The previous releases have all been pretty big boxes, but this one has to be the biggest box I got from the line. Look, at this point you've heard me talk about the movie, so instead let me focus for a bit on the character. I mean, this is our original cinematic Spidey, right? So there's a huge sense of nostalgia associated with him. And with the appearance of Alfred Molina's Doc Ock and Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, he had to make an appearance in the movie. And it really was great to see him back after all those years and see his interaction again with his villains, and of course the interaction with both Tom and Andrew. I think that was really a highlight of the movie. And I do have to admit, a lot of this was fan service, but the movie did it remarkably well, and it did help close the arc on him a little bit. So the set is also a great opportunity to pick up Sandman. Now, in the movie, we never fully saw him as Thomas Hayden Church, except for a brief moment at the end. So as far as 6-scale versions of him, there is a third-party Sandman out there that was okay. I actually passed on that one since I wasn't sold on it, but this diorama provides a great option to get some version of Sandman in your collection. So let's take a look at what we're getting here from Hot Toys, and you're seeing a decent amount of items, although clearly that diorama base is eye-catching, just from a pure scale perspective. But you do get a bunch of hands, webs, an unmasked sculpt along with the fabric mask for the figure to hold, and the cure mechanism that's devised for Sandman. Now the rest are just components for the diorama, including some signs that you just place as debris, and because this is the exclusive, this one does include a Doc Ock tentacle, identical to what we saw with the Tom Holland Deluxe from the movie, although not at all as complex as the actual arms we got with the figure. So a decent set nonetheless. So let's jump into the accessories, and we're going to start with the hands. And look, these shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who has picked up a Hot Toys Spidey figure. It's not to say that they're cheap or more of the same, but they're more of the same. And they do work. You get a ton of hands, from fists to splayed out hands for action displays, web shooting hands, and some other unique ones, including a hand specifically designed for 2 of the web accessories, and you'll get the 2 attachments for the web shooting hands that allow you to connect the web pieces to create that dynamic look of webs coming out of his wrists. Now, I do have the same slight complaints here that I had with the Andrew Garfield version, and that's that these are much more hard plastic, and it's not exactly a great match for the figure suit. The best example of matching hands, easily the Tom Holland version, although there that also does have to do with the design of the suit itself, so I do realize that. But look, they still look great with the raised webbing, and what you can hopefully see is the ghosted in patterns on the red, creating that interlocking honeycomb pattern, which is pretty cool. Next up, you get the webs, and again, these particular ones shouldn't surprise you. They're all reused webs from previous Spideys. Now, Hot Toys has updated these with some of their more recent pre-orders, but these are pieces we're all familiar with the longer attachments, the ones that have the little bulbs at the end, as well as the 2 different versions that can let you pose Spidey in a hanging or swinging setup. They work. There's definitely a reason Hot Toys keeps reusing them, but I'm glad that they're finally evolving that. Next up, you get the fabric mask that you can pose with him, and look, nothing crazy here. It's got the nice raised webbing over the red fabric, and like the gloves, the fabric has a ghosted in pattern that gives it a little more detail, and it has the distinctive Tobe lenses. Next up, you get the cool looking cure piece that he uses to revert Sandman back to his full human state, and it's pretty nice looking with great detailing on the fins and the electronics, and I do like that you get the detailing on the wires as well. Very much gives you the feel of a makeshift mechanism that gives you some specific posing options, movie specific posing options, and it goes along with the accessory you got with the lizard base for the Andrew Garfield version of Spidey. Now next is the piece that truly makes this figure a deluxe, and that's the Sandman base. So again, I cannot emphasize enough how insane the scale is on this thing. Base is bigger than the 2 other deluxe versions we got with Andrew and Tobe, and those were pretty large to begin with. A huge part of that, though, is that you're getting Sandman's face in a large form, and you're also getting a hand emerging from the rubble. So not just a vertically tall piece, but also a wide stance. And you can even see beams and trusses embedded within the Sandman that just give you an extra visual cue and display option. It's big enough that even the signs that you get supplied with could easily just be hidden within and completely out of sight. Head has some nice slight motion where you can pivot around the base, so that's another nice little touch. Overall, it's also really dynamic with pieces of sand flowing and dropping around the hand. A lot of credit to Hot Toys for this one. And texture-wise, it looks like sand and it feels like sand. It's almost like they glued some actual fines on this to give it that grainy, almost sandpaper feel, so I appreciate that further attention to detail. And also, as a special edition, you do get the added Doc Ock tentacle, which looks great. It lacks the extensive detailing we got with the figure itself, but for a display piece, it works. It's basically a solid bendy rod with rubberized tentacle around it, and a ball joint to give you some articulation on the pincer at the end. So all basically done in service of adding to that diorama, which I'm not complaining about. So look, fully assembled, this is easily a standout piece. And it is heavy. I have it on the rotating stand and you can see that it's struggling a little bit. But I really wanted to let you see the details, like the beam on the side of the head, which is a little warped and shows significant signs of rust, as well as how the head is being formed by a sort of wave of sand that's hollow on the interior, and it just has a bit of a dynamic feel of things flowing. And you can see the truss sticking out at an angle, also shown in a state of distress with rust, and the tentacle Doc Ock tentacle connection point at the rear. Because of this sand motif, it just feels like it's shooting out of the sand seamlessly, which is awesome. Hand itself also has some rocks and boulders in it, and I think that each of the fingers has a bit of sand falling off, creating these pillars of material that again give it that dynamic feel. And even the base part has a lot of detail work with little projections in and out. Again, the material choice. Hot Toys could have easily done molded textured plastic, but I like that they went just a little further because it makes the piece look that much better. Alright, so now let's move to the figure and we'll start with the mask sculpt. It's that unique Tobe Maguire look for the character with the smaller size lenses, especially when compared to Andrew's version, and the slightly thicker webbing in silver that looks great. Now, I know there were some concerns about the seam on the top of the head, and you could definitely see it right down the middle of the mask, but you have to look closely to notice it, so for me it's not a huge issue. The lenses also have that nice pattern on the inside with all the dots that just look good. The only other issue I have is the neck, which has a very distinctive joint, and of course, that's related more to the mechanism for swapping out the heads, pretty much identical to the Andrew Garfield one, and if you saw my review, you all know how much I dislike that, particularly because it limits posability of the sculpt. Now, you do get the alternate version as well here, which is the unmasked Tobe Maguire sculpt. Honestly, I think this is another excellent one from Hot Toys. Likeness to me is there without a doubt. Now, when I saw the prototypes, I did think he looked a little too young, and I do still think that's the case, a little bit. But there's actually some really good detailing here that gets lost in the light. The forehead, for example, has some nice subtle wrinkling, and the face overall has some fine detailed freckling. And he does come with some facial hair that looks good, but I think it needed to be a tad more pronounced like in the movie. But again, just to give you an insight into how good these sculpts can be, there's even a slight blemish on the side of the sculpt by his cheek. It's not a paint issue, it's an actual blemish that they just added as a skin detail, which is great. The eyes on this look phenomenal, the hair looks great, it's just a really solid looking piece. Now, the figure itself looks really good, and while I do collect a lot of Hot Toys figures, I actually had decided to pass on those original Tobe Maguire releases from Spider-Man 3, so I don't have those in hand to compare against, but I'll focus on this one, and he looks pretty good, with the nice fabric red detailing that has the distinctive looking spider logos on the chest and back, and the raised webbing, also continuing that ghosted pattern. And the blue is a nice textured shiny material that looks good and does provide nice posability. Overall, it's a very simple version of Spidey, which is good. It's just a classic look, and I think it still holds up. So look, as far as posability, what's a Spider-Man figure that can't pose? And fortunately for us, this one's no exception. Clothes aren't restricted at all, and the joints are ratcheted, which is great. With some of these single-piece suits, the material tends to want to force the arms or legs back and pull them down, so ratcheting lets you lock those poses in. Now, I will tell you the suit does tend to bunch up a little as you pose them, so you'll have to futz around with it just to get it looking okay. And just like with anything, be careful of super dynamic poses. In the long run, there's always a concern that there could be some damage to the material, but it's a great looking piece overall with a very classy feel. For me, because of the display options, I actually think I might opt to display all three figures with the unmasked sculpts so that you get more of a standout presence of who each one is. And that's one aspect where I think Hot Toys killed it. With this figure, like with the Andrew Garfield, my biggest issue overall is the posability of the head. Because of the mechanism they used, you really can't get the head pose looking up or down, so it's a little challenging to get one of those extremely dynamic poses to look just right. It can be done, but it's an issue. I get why they did it, because it provides better looking neck piece for the sculpts, but but I think with Spidey, I would have preferred a little bit more posability. But look, with the base and this entire package, how can you not be impressed? Overall display just looks amazing, and it will take a ton of display space, but how can I not display that Sandman? And it's funny how small Spidey looks in the midst of everything going on with the diorama, but it's again one of those pieces that you leave out for a little bit and just keeps on drawing you back with all the detail work and the posing options you truly get. So I'm impressed and extremely happy with how this turned out. Not the best figure I've gotten recently, but an overall awesome package and a great way to conclude my version of the No Way Home line. So look, that was a quick look at the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Deluxe version from Hot Toys. An amazing release, and one that if you're a fan of the movie or the character and you're able to get, I think you'll be impressed. And I think it'll impress even non-collectors. So thanks for watching, and as always, let me know your thoughts. And if you're enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next one.